Hello, hello, hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America. I'm your host, Joshua Washington, joined by my lovely co host, Olga Washington.
Good evening, everyone. So glad that you could join us this evening.
Yes, we are super excited. That song you just heard, the theme song for our weekly forums, is called "The First 7 Miles" by Randy Sandoli. You can check it out on all streaming platforms. It's on an album called Simcha, and you should see it pop up on the screen there. Randy Sandoli. Check out the whole album; it's incredible. Thank you, Randy, for that theme song.
Where can I get a copy of that?
It's on all streaming platforms, everywhere. So Apple Music, iTunes, Spotify, everywhere you can stream music, you'll find it, and you can check that out. Give them some streams, check out the music. Visit our website. If this is your first time checking out IPSI, you can visit our website at ibsi.org to see our content, the stuff that we put out there, why we exist, and even some historical documents, just highlighting some really major historical events that weren't previously on the internet. And you can see why we do what we do. You can also find us on Substack if you go to ibsi.substack.com or go to Africa Israel Weekly. You can subscribe. You can be a free subscriber. You can be a paid subscriber. You can see our articles, podcasts. We have other content that we put on there as well. And we have other things that are more for premium subscribers. So if you want to see everything we have to offer, then consider becoming a monthly paid subscriber. And you can support us in that way. Speaking of support, become a legacy builder. Olga, why don't you tell us more about what that is?
So before I speak about Legacy Builder, also be sure to follow us on all social media platforms. Of course, we know that it helps with the algorithms, and there is incredible content that the Institute for Black Solidarity has to share with the world. In fact, we mentioned this last week, and we may speak to it a little later in the show, but there has been a massive increase in demand for IPSI because of the appreciation of what we bring to the important conversation of not only combating anti-Semitism, but ensuring that there is forward movement in the solidarity and working together with Africans and the Jewish people, as well as Israel and Africa, as well as African Americans here in the United States. So a legacy builder is somebody that's like, you know what, IPSI, I believe in what you're doing. I appreciate the fact that the work that you're doing as a nonprofit organization requires the big donors, but more importantly, it requires the small donors, people that are consistent in supporting us financially. And it doesn't matter how much you would like to support us by, but it's a monthly commitment, tax deductible, a monthly commitment that you make, $5, $10, $15, $50, $100, whatever you have, in order to ensure that the work of IPSI is able to continue, that we're able to fill in the capacity needs that we greatly need. And whenever I get the opportunity to speak to it, I mentioned what you said, Joshua, 3 years ago, that IPSI has as one of its commitments to its supporters as well as its donors that we will not be in the same format that you find us here today in the years to come, because we are about shifting the conversation, shifting the needle, really transforming the relationship that we find around Israel and the Jewish people here in the United States and across Africa. So your small dollar, your big dollar as a legacy builder will ensure that indeed Africa and Israel become closer, whether it's politically or economically or even culturally and socially, and that there is an appreciation and understanding of the relationship between the Jewish people as well as African Americans here in the United States.
Absolutely. So go to ibsi.org/donate. Also, last week, 3 people who were tuning in to our forum became legacy builders. So I want to say welcome and thank you for your support of IPSI. And for those, again, like Olga said, who are watching now, you can do it anytime during the program. You can scan the QR code that's up in the corner over right here. Boom. And become a legacy builder while you're listening. If you like what's being said, or you've heard of us before and you really appreciate what we do, please do that. All right. Merchandise. We have a merch store. We have lots of merchandise. I'm wearing one of them. I think this is ours.
Yes.
Iron Lion Zion. Hold on. I'm going to stand up a little bit so you can see it all. Boom, boom, boom.
It's pretty cool.
It's a nice t-shirt. It's one of my favorites. We have jewelry. We have water bottles. We have like book journals you can get, and more. So please go to our merch store. Obviously, we have copies of Zionism in the Black Church, which was written by our CEO and founder. Mugs, other T-shirts. Check it out, you all. And that's a cool way to support IPSI and have some cool stuff. Have some cool, what we used to call swag. That's what we say still.
Apparently, the younger ones call it drip now.
They say,
So
I
you
wonder
wanna
if it's
be
a
drip.
new word at this point. Because I feel like that even is a little bit, it might be dated a little bit. But please, you can get some cool stuff while supporting us. And we would greatly appreciate that. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Some announcements. Well, we just go to ibsi.org/dates if you want to see the events that are coming up. Our CEO and founder is going to be at a few places. He'll be in Washington, D.C. for the IAC, which is help me, Olga, the
Israeli American Coalition.
Israeli
Council.
Israeli American Council, I believe.
Israeli American Council.
It's a conference that's happening in D.C. or a gala, I believe.
It's a conference.
It's a conference that our CEO is speaking at. He's going to be at a few different things before this year is over. Quite a bit, actually, before this calendar year is done. And we, as IPSI, have a couple of other big announcements that we want to share too. But in a few weeks, once we kind of get some more things planned. But before this year's over, even though we're in September and we only got a few months left, yes, we are planning for next year, and we'll talk about that more as we go. But this year isn't over, and we have a lot of stuff planned for this year as well. And so, yeah, please go to ibsi.org/dates. You'll be able to see where we're going to be, and then also just follow us on social media, because different ones of us will be in different places at different times for all kinds of reasons related to Israel and Israel Africa, and we don't want you to miss that. And those things may not always be on the IPSI website because maybe it's not an IPSI hosted event, or they just requested for one of us to come and represent, but we still want you to be in touch and know what we're doing. So follow us, follow IPSI, and it's good to see y'all here. I'm seeing the comments come in. Welcome. Ping your friends and neighbors, tell them to come in. We got a few things to talk about today. Let's get right into it. So this isn't officially on the list, but I do want to talk about this because I saw it on the news this morning when I woke up, on not the news, but Substack. I follow this page called the Free Press. And then, Olga, you brought it up again this evening or this afternoon, which was just American Airlines, not American, the company, but airlines in America. So United Airlines, American Airlines, Delta Airlines. Since the war started in Israel, they've suspended flights to Israel, right? I don't think any of them have kind of flopped back and forth. And their reasons are because of the war, right? It's they don't know, it's volatile, whatever. So the only airlines that connects America to our ally in the Middle East and Israel is El Al, which is an Israeli airline that comes to the U.S. And so there's an article in the Free Press that was written about how this could dangerously be playing into Iran's hands. And when I say Iran is not just in a proxy war with Israel, with the terrorist organizations, but Iran has factions of like propaganda arms all over the world, including in the U.S. So when the Ayatollah tweeted in support of Black Lives Matter, when the Ayatollah just recently tweeted in support of like the encampments on the college campuses in America, it wasn't just him approving of it. He's seeing his dollars at work, basically, right? The fruits of his labor. He's seeing that manifest in America ripping itself apart. On September 11th, there was an anti-Israel, pro-Intifada demonstration at Ground Zero, right? So we're not even, 2001 was September 11th, right? I was 10 years old. It was just, 14 years ago, almost now. And we're already at people celebrating that and protesting America on September 11th. This is partially the doing of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so the airlines, United, Delta, and American, not flying to Israel, even though their pretense is because there's a war, this could play into Iran's hands, just in that the BDS movement and others can apply pressure on them to continue to not fly to Israel. And I think that it would be easier for them to do that because airlines are already not doing it. We've already seen a lot of even larger companies cave to pressure, the mob pressure. And so this could be something that could be even worse. But go ahead, Olga.
I haven't read the article. I did see the first page and the headline, and it struck me as very interesting. But just listening to how you were describing it, Joshua, the first thing that I thought about was BDS, right? Because one of the things about BDS is to boycott. And even though it may have started initially as, yes, we don't have the safety capabilities that El Al has. I mean, there's talk. I've never investigated it. So if anybody that's listening has a little bit more information, please feel free to drop it in the comments. But that there's real smart technology with these aircrafts that is able to detect if there's danger around. And so, yes, whilst these airlines may not have those capabilities, when it starts to really extend over a prolonged period, and also when you can see how, if I may be so blunt, how strategic the other side is, and how Iran is very strategic, and how there are these very covert efforts to undermine Israel and weaken the relationship between Israel and America, in addition to the overt efforts. I would say to people that we need to start paying attention to this, and listening to a statement that continues to ring in my head that my dad said to me a couple of years ago, when at the time it was taking students to Israel and war had broken out. And I remember going to him and saying, Rev, Dad, there's war. Do we go? And he was absolutely. He was like, absolutely, that's where you go. Israel needs her friends the most at this time. And so that's when we should be going. And so for Americans, here's an opportunity that, one, we need to be paying very close attention to. And the second thing is then starting to put pressure on these airlines to be like, you know what, you need to start resuming flights to Israel, even if it's not at the frequency that you did before. But to not have any is not acceptable, especially when we look at the number of Jews that live in America and that frequent Israel, right? Not even taking into account the non-Jews that go to Israel for various reasons. So this is a very interesting development, and I think that we need to be paying a lot more attention to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. And if not for anything, I mean, the flight prices to Israel has shot up because there's only one airline coming from America to Israel. I mean, so the demand is crazy high, and so it's also making it difficult for everyday people to visit Israel, or to go home, if we're talking about Jews in America or Israelis here in America. So we'll be updating you all on that, and keeping our finger on that pulse. Okay, so got a couple of things regarding Africa here, and they're connected. First off, this is a few days ago, but this is developing, and it's a good thing. So we have 40 African lawmakers that affirm and reaffirm Israel's right to Jerusalem as its eternal, undivided capital. And this is incredible. This, first of all, it just continues what we continue to say at Israel, that Africa is not a monolith. So these are 40, not just 40 lay people, which is still great, but these are 40 people of authority in different countries in Africa, people who are representing Botswana, Cameroon, the Central African Republic, Ivory Coast, Kenya, Madagascar, Nigeria, Rwanda, South Africa, South Sudan. So these are lawmakers. These are lawyers and what do you call
legislators?
Like legislators in these countries who are making this declaration, and also standing for a closer tie between Africa and Israel. And so there was a whole event that was had. It was called the Addis Ababa Declaration of Africa-Israel Cooperation and Partnership. Okay, and that was a resolution that was signed by these 40 lawmakers from these different countries. And the purpose of this coming together, and we were just talking about this too, is not. I think that still in the West, whether it's, I'll go stick with the pro-Israel space in the West. But in the West in general, we're very comfortable still here. We talk about terror and things like that, but the reality is, just proximity wise, it's much more of a just a blatant reality in places like Israel, because we have friends who can look out their backyard and say, there is Syria and there is Lebanon, right? Where like Hezbollah's attacking there, and it's crazy. So it's a little bit different. And so part of this coming together is not just to say, look at us, we're together. Blacks and Jews, yay. No. This coming together is we need to figure out strategically how we can help each other from this imminent and this pressing threat that continues to grow, both in the Middle East and in Africa, which is Islam, right? Which is radical Islam. So there's a real need that's here, and there's a real way that Africa and Israel can come together. Olga, you said it a bunch of times before that yes, the U.S.-Israel relationship is definitely an important one. I can't remember the word that's usually used for that, but the Africa-Israel relationship is definitely a very strategic one, because of that. Because October 7th happens every day, literally every day. You can turn on the news in one of these African countries, in Niger, in Nigeria, in the Congo, in South Sudan, and you can see October 7th happening in one of those countries, in a village, in a town, in that country. So this is a real threat for them. And Africans, there was already much solidarity between the African people and the Israeli people, but even more so now, Africans are seeing what happens to them on a daily basis happen to Israelis are also seeing that as well. So this coming together, I think, is powerful, because it's saying, okay, how can we protect ourselves, better protect ourselves, and help protect each other?
There's a lot that I'd like to unpack on this, so let me get my thoughts together and hopefully articulate this succinctly. So the first thing is just on what you said, Joshua, about what I've been saying for a while, and I continue to believe it with every fiber of my being, that whereas the United States is said to be Israel's strongest ally, I think that relationship is under a lot of stress at the moment. Africa is Israel's most strategic ally, and not only for the reasons that you've put forth, which are 100% correct, that there are commonalities in terms of the dangers that Israelis face and that Africans face. And so the opportunity, particularly for Africans, to learn from Israel, in issues such as counterterrorism, and then also Israel being an innovator and a leader in the world of agriculture and food security and those type of things, and the ability to help Africans, but also in the positive sense. And this is something that we unpacked at the first in-person Israel-Africa Forum several weeks ago, Olga, 2 weeks ago. It feels like several weeks ago.
In DC.
In DC.
2 weeks,
and that we're going to be speaking to as well in October. We'll share some information on that next week at our final pastor series that Pastor Dumisani has been doing online with our pastors, unpacking why Africa, in a positive sense, is an incredible ally for Israel, whether it's in relation to economic opportunities. Africa's not poor. Doesn't matter what you see on the television, Africa's not poor, and we look at the statistics showcasing that, but also the political influence that many of these African nations are starting to step up to, faith-based diplomacy, which is something that was really spoken to at this particular summit, and various other reasons. So yes, strategically, Africa and Israel coming together is going to ensure that the landscape of what Zionism looks like over the next coming years is going to change. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's very encouraging for me as an individual who is in the legal space and who, God willing, one day is going to be in a position to be able to influence the trajectory of leadership in her country, where you have these lawyers, these lawmakers, these members of the legislators. Joshua, they went there in their personal capacity. So even though their governments and some of the names that you listed, those countries have got a neutral stance as it pertains to Israel, here you have individuals who are convicted about the truth and the importance of their countries standing with Israel and standing on the declaration that despite what the pressures of the world may be, despite what the United Nations may be and other world organizations, that Jerusalem is the eternal undivided capital of Israel. And just as, and we continue to thank the United States of America underneath the leadership of the Trump administration several years ago for making that declaration, that Israel is the undivided capital of Israel. that these nations will start to follow in that lead and also move their embassies from where they are in Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. So their personal conviction, them coming together, them drafting this resolution, and then going back home to say, okay, how do we mobilize? How do we really engage in grassroots activism and activities in our places of influence so that this position can take on a more formal role, a more formal position by our countries. So definitely, you know, Josh, we've spoken a lot on this forum how the relationship between Africa and Israel on the ground amongst the people is very different to how these African nations vote at the United Nations. So something like this is definitely good progress in ensuring that the position of Africa at the United Nations and other world bodies will slowly shift. Actually, let me not say slowly, but that it'll shift and God willing, shift quite quickly.
Absolutely. I mean, our future as a society, it really depends on this in a really big way. I mean, we say it a lot. We've been saying it since October 7th, but it's been true even before that Israel is at the front lines of a global war. It really is. It really is radical Islam against those who aren't, and that even includes Muslims who aren't radical. So, is in Africa is not at the front lines in terms of fighting, like military wise, but Africa bears the brunt of these attacks as well. And so this is something that would not only stave that off, but as you said, Olga, could actually allow Africa to thrive and Africa and Israel together to thrive, and that would benefit the world greatly. So
if I could add just two quick things. One, I think it's telling that in a season where many countries in the world, including unfortunately the United States of America, are taking a more antagonistic approach towards Israel and wagging their fingers in Israel's face, here you have Africa rising and African nations, these leaders representing these nations, embracing Israel and embracing what is considered in many parts of the world, many parts of the geopolitical space, as a very contentious issue that, wow, Jerusalem, East Jerusalem is supposed to be for the Palestinians. I was like, no, all of Jerusalem, both factually, historically, as well as biblically, belongs to Israel. It belongs to the Jewish people. So that they are taking the stance at this moment is very telling. And then secondly, one of the things that was discussed quite a bit, let me not say one of the things, but several of the things that were discussed included the fact of how closely connected Africans are to Israel and to the Jewish people. And that is something from a very positive perspective that the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel does. Why am I getting so tongue twisted? That we do when we go and we have these conversations and we engage and we educate, because oftentimes people will say, yeah, but it is the Black people that stand in solidarity with the Arab Palestinians because just as Israel is committing apartheid and just as Israel is a colonizer, the Africans can speak to that because that's what happened to them. No, that is not our shared history. There is no apartheid in Israel. There is no colonialism in Israel. And as a result of that, in fact, it's the opposite, right? Israel, as well as the whole notion of Zionism, represents how a people who were displaced from their homeland have gone back home and have built their nation, and how African nations and African people, how they were displaced as a result of colonialism and slavery and imperialism and various other evils. It's an inspiration for us to look at and go back home and be able to build our nations. So it was wonderful for that conversation to once again remind the Africans that knew, but then also tell those people that did not know that Israel as well as Africa has got more in common. Africans as well as Jews have got more in common than they have in difference.
Absolutely. And this reminds me of, I remember, or I keep bringing this up because there was a study that was done, and I remember, and I only caught this study, I think, because only because we're in the Israel space and people were freaking out. And this is now taking it to Black America, but I'm drawing a parallel that 1,000 Black pastors, stand against Israel. And there was a study that was done, and 1,000 Black pastors, they called on the Biden administration, Black meaning Black American, right? The Black American pastors across the country were calling on the Biden administration to cease fire or to pressure Israel to cease fire in Gaza and and reading the article. And which was interesting was that, our last, and we'll talk about this still some more. We keep talking about it because we're doing more of these. But our conference in DC 2 weeks ago were with pastors in that area, Black pastors. Only like 2 or 3 of whom knew who we were already. The rest of them who came, which is a room about 20 pastors, have either never heard of IPSI or maybe heard a couple of things. So there were people on different pages about Israel, right? It was a very mixed crowd in terms of what's going on in the Middle East. Everything from I don't know much to I don't know if I agree with you. And when our CEO spoke, he cited that stat. He said he showed the screenshot and he said, "So here's what this is how the anti-Israel propaganda machine tries to elicit the Black voice." And one of the ways is that they do this, right? And then he said, "How many of you have heard of this study?" None of the pastors raised their hand. Okay. Now, our CEO does more of these pastors events than in the past than we have. So that was Olga and my first one planning together. And he said, "I'm telling you this now." I told the pastors. He goes all around the country, meets with pastors from everywhere, from all the way from California all the way to DC, to Atlanta, to Milwaukee, to Detroit, to all that. And he said, all of the events that I do, when I show this stat to a room full of pastors, whether it's a room full of 20 pastors or 500, almost nobody has even heard of the statistic before. And he said, the reason for that is that this stat isn't for you, it's for them. They're doing this for them. So they got the mouthpieces that they felt would say what they wanted them to say and got them to sign off on that and then plastered that up there for their people, for their anti-Israel people, for their own propaganda purposes. That's why you've never heard of it, because they don't actually give a care about Black pastors and Black voices or anything. They actually, most of them hate the church, hate Christians, but they know that the Black voice is powerful, and so they want to use it. And all that to say that our voice is powerful as people who have a history of overcoming slavery, Jim Crow, segregation, and lynchings, and all types of just horrendous things, and still doing things like building Black Wall Street, and the whole Harlem Renaissance was us, and the Tuskegee Airmen, and making these ginormous feats in American history. And everyone who is worth their salt, who knows what they're doing with their movements, they know that the Black voice is important in their movement, even if their movement has nothing to do with Black people, hence the whole Palestinian thing. There's nothing to do with Black people, but they make it that way because they want to use the voice. And then when they're done, they'll discard Black people so swiftly, it's not even funny, which is why we saw what we talked about a couple weeks ago. Black activists in the anti-Israel movement saying, you guys are actually really racist and you're treating us like crap. And you never allow us to say anything that we feel we need to say or advocate for ourselves. You only want us in the room for you. And then you tell us to shut up when we want to say anything else. And that's what we've been saying. We've been saying that for years now. They don't care about us. They just want our voice. And that's the same thing is true for the African.
I'm just smiling because on social media, I think it was yesterday, I was scrolling through and I saw a video from the Black Caucus Gala that was held, I think, over the weekend. And there's this lone gentleman, free Palestine. And everybody's going, free Palestine, free Palestine. And the people in the room were kind of like, dude, please, like, we have things to do. People, like, they were just so uninterested. And it just goes to show again that when it comes to matters that actually pertain to the Black people that are really of worth to us, we're like, yeah, whatever, take that somewhere else. Like, that's just not who we are and what we want to be a part of. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't any helpful idiots, useful idiots out there that for whatever reason have decided to leave their brains back at home and join the bandwagon for something that ultimately is to their detriment. Like, unfortunately, there are some of those there, and we're doing our best to reach out to those who are still in the space where they can be helped, which is, again, why we need your support in order to do so, because we have had incredible stories of young people, pastors, as recent as this forum in DC 2 weeks ago. They were like, we had no idea.
Mhm.
We have to do something.
Mhm.
We have to say something, but we
Yeah.
had no idea. Thank you for bringing the truth. Thank
Yes.
you for bringing understanding. Thank you for showing the history, the facts.
Yes.
It's not just all on emotions and,
Mhm.
because of the color of your skin, you have to do something. Like, no,
Right.
there's real rational
There's
reasoning
real.
as to why Black people have and
Yeah.
continue to stand in solidarity with Israel and the Jewish people.
Yeah. There were tears. There were tears at the end of it. I mean, this is something I think that really drove it home. Was our CEO said, "We're not Black pastors didn't choose the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts. It chose us," is what he said. He said, "Some of you already know what I'm talking about, where you've been confronted with people who are trying to elicit your voice for their cause." They said, "Well, yeah, you see, a pastor doesn't mean you know everything, but there are things sometimes that grab your attention more than others. And unfortunately, the free Palestine side has been trying for so long to hijack movements that it is becoming more and more incumbent upon Black pastors in this country to know what actually is going on, only because there's an onslaught against their voice and using their voice to prop up something that they're not even sure, should I be propping up this cause? Like, I don't even know what's going on. And so you're right. At the end of the conference, even even the ones that came that weren't really sure, I mean, they were just saying thank you. I had no idea. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. Like, I had no idea this and that, the other. And so we're already working on we're doing pastors events across the country next year, but we're already working on a follow-up one in the DC area, to be able to follow up with some of those same pastors and then some other ones that they're going to bring with them as well. So we'll be giving you more details about that. I want to take a quick commercial break, but we're staying right here to say, as you're watching, if you're enjoying this, we have a few more things to talk about tonight. You enjoy IPSI, you enjoy these forums, you enjoy the events that we do, the content that we put out, the educational videos, all those things. Please, right now, and you can still do it because it's still up in the corner of our screen. If you go up to the corner right over here, scan that QR code. There we go. Boom. And donate to IPSI. You can become a legacy builder if you go to ibsi.org/donate and set up a monthly amount. So 3 of you did it last week, and we appreciate you for it. All you do is go on the site, click on donate, click on become a legacy builder, and you can set up a small amount. We have people who give $15 a month, $20 a month. We have people who started that small who now give $50 a month, $100 a month. You can give $1,000 a month if you can, but those monthly donations really, really help IPSI move in the direction that we need to move in, even more so than some of the big ones that we occasionally get. The monthly donations that you all are able to give, those are, I mean, that's everything. That really does help IPSI move forward. So scan the QR code you see right in front of you, become a legacy builder today, and help us continue to strengthen the ties between the Black and Jewish and Africa-Israel relationship. All right, you guys. Okay, so we're going to move on. Olga, I have a question for you. So South Africa was a country that was represented at the Addis Ababa conference that we talked about.
Actually, it wasn't. So
I did see it in the article.
I saw it too,
but they weren't.
So I don't know if they were hoping that they would be there, but I do know that the caucus for Israel Allies that was part of the organizing of the conference, that South Africa is a member of that.
Okay.
And so I wonder if that was reference to that. I mean, of course, it made my heart very sad that South Africa was not represented there, but I do want to both objectively as well as subjectively give a shout out to Reverend Mishra, who happens to be family as well as a great supporter of the work of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, who has in the past done a lot of great work together with the allies in this type of work. But to answer your question directly, no, South Africa was not there.
That's a shame. Well, I was hoping to segue in a different way to this, but we'll just still segue anyway. So South Africa wasn't actually there, even though they are a member of the Allies caucus. Israel and South Africa have been, in terms of the governments, I should say. I got to be more specific here because, again, South African people, I mean, you could throw a quarter in a busy town and you ask them, what do you think about Israel? And they'll probably tell you like, oh, it's great and whatever, Israel's fine. Like, but the government of South Africa took Israel to the International Court of Justice. We talked about this, and we're charging them on claims of genocide and That was the main thing. War crimes, and so that has still been going on. Israel was recently trying to get South Africa to stop doing that, and then actually South Africa asked for a postponement because they're supposed to submit evidence of genocide and evidence of war crimes by the 26th of October, I believe, something like that, 28th. So they just requested a postponement to that because I guess they don't have evidence right now. So there's a lot of stuff happening within when it comes to the government. And so I want you to speak on that with us, Olga.
So let's take a few steps back and bring everybody up to speed, especially those who may not have been following this carefully. I'm sure you've heard it in the news. So towards the end of last year, South Africa brings a case at the International Court of Justice, making various allegations, including the fact that Israel, as a result of the war, is committing a genocide in Gaza. And for anybody that knows the situation on the ground, that even chooses to pay half attention, you don't even have to pay full attention, pay half attention to this scenario, you will know that this is a falsehood. Unfortunately, this, of course, was wonderful news to the ears of the anti-Semites in the world and the anti-Semitic media, and it caused a lot of traction that here is at least, one country that is standing up for human rights and for justice and ensuring that Israel is brought to justice. And so in January of this year, we heard arguments brought by the South African legal team, and there was a response to as well by the Israeli team. What many people who weren't paying attention thought was that the judgment that was then given by the court, and we've spoken about this before, the only dissenting voice was that of a Ugandan, an African, Julius Sebutindi, who was like, this is not accurate. But the judgment that was given was that there is a probability that South Africa has got jurisdiction because there's a probability that there might be genocide in the sense that the convention had application, right? The court did not rule on the fact that, yes, there was genocide taking place. They didn't do that. Now they are needing to hear evidence of the fact to say, okay, the genocide convention applies. So now bring your case in terms of the merits so that we can actually determine, is there a genocide taking place in Gaza at the fault of Israel? Bless my dear country. They're struggling to put the evidence together. And I'm like, you've had it since January. And because you are like this, you're in cahoots, very close relationship with Hamas and Iran. If there was real genocide taking place and you knew that you had a strong legal case, that information should have been aplenty. There's international organizations, Amnesty International, the United Nations, all of whom have also been accusing Israel of this. So why don't you have the facts and the evidence that you need in order to show this, for it to be properly interrogated? And so South Africa, there's a deadline in order to do this. There's reports that the South African legal team was like, we need a postponement, please. Can we have a postponement? And the court was like, no, you've had enough time. We will see you in a couple of weeks. And rightfully so, because there is no evidence of a genocide. Is there evidence of a lot of suffering? Yes, there is. But let's be accurate about why that suffering happens. Let's apply our minds in terms of what is going on. There's a war that's going on, and a war against an enemy that has embedded itself in civilian infrastructure. I mean, just several days ago, there was a video that was released by the IDF that showed that directly underneath a children's classroom, a children's playroom, a nursery, there were tunnels leading underground, and various other things that we know that have existed, from rockets and other weapons there. Like, they showed it. They showed. So yes, I don't want to say that I'm looking forward to the case in October. I do hope that the legal team and South Africa, particularly because now we have a new form of government. We've got the Government of National Unity, which comprises many different parties and not just the ANC, that sanity and common sense will prevail, and that they will save themselves the embarrassment of having to step up onto the international stage and try and prove something that doesn't exist. And whatever their reason may be, frankly, I think this is, Joshua, one of those times where I won't mind any spin in terms of media spin, that they just say, you know what, we're withdrawing our case for whatever reason, because unfortunately this has not only been a waste of time, it's been a waste of South African taxpayers' money, and it has contributed to the libel against Israel being an entity that just wants to kill the innocent.
I just thought of something when you said that. This also proves again and again and again that those who try and use the black voice to come against Israel don't actually care about the black people, because we know this already, because we know that the ANC has been in bed with Hamas, all that stuff. Okay, Hamas, you're the ones who put this government up to this. Why aren't you helping them with getting the evidence or something?
Right.
Right? Why are you
I love
leaving?
that.
Now
Mm-hmm.
their credibility is on the line.
Mm-hmm.
They're sweating bullets now because
Mm-hmm.
everyone's like, okay, you said genocide. That's a huge word. That's huge implications. Show us. And like, okay, we'll find it for you. Hamas, can you help us? And Hamas is you already did their work for them. You did their dirty work by standing up with your black South African voice that went through apartheid and everything and said, this country's committing genocide. That's all they needed from you. And they walked away. So now you're twisting and turning in the wind, trying to find evidence for something that doesn't exist. And where's your help? Where are the people who put you up to it in the first place? That'd be like on the playground. You want to step up to someone that you think is a bully. So you step up, you ask your friend to help you. Your friend goes in front of you. And as soon as your friend calls him out, you run away. And now it's just your friend getting their behind kicked by the like, hello, where are your friends? where are those people who said, hey, say this about Israel and it'll be great? Where's your reward? Where's your payoff? And this goes all the way back to the 70s when Egypt and other countries told African countries, if you don't break ties with Israel, if you don't break diplomatic ties with Israel, then we will stop giving you oil. We will, or if you do it, then we'll help you.
Promise,
We'll counter terrorism, right? In I think it was Ethiopia. No, it was Somalia. One of those countries right in that area. They said they were told if they broke off ties with Israel, then we'll help you with these bandits that are in your area. And not only did not help them, they broke ties with Israel, and that country that promised them that funded the terrorism, gave them more weapons to slaughter them with. So none of these countries actually got anything that they were promised since the 1970s. Like, I want to back up for a second. There was no oil. These African countries are poorer than ever. They used to be Zambia was the breadbasket of Africa. Was it Zambia or Zimbabwe? No, Zimbabwe was considered the breadbasket of Africa, together with Ethiopia. They were high thriving. Singapore, when it was still trying to come up, would visit Zimbabwe to get to learn and learn how to grow and flourish. So what did you get out of that? And again, South Africa, what did you get out of this deal with Hamas? Because again, now you're out here struggling, and where are they? They're building tunnels underneath children's schools. Is that the legacy that you want to leave? And so seeing these 40 lawmakers representing these other African countries coming together and saying, this is not us, we are supporting Israel and we're standing with Israel's right, and Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel, and we want to work together on counterterrorism, that again shows that there are more and more Africans who it's already been there, but there are more Africans who are speaking up and saying, no, this is who we are. And these are who our friends actually are. And these aren't our friends. So, yeah.
Love it. And one of the things that we're hoping to see from this particular summit that was announced is the Queen of Sheba Accords. They haven't given a lot of information about it, but it was something that was proposed at the summit to take after the Abraham Accords. To say, just as we saw some of these Middle Eastern countries normalizing their relationships with Israel, and not just normalizing, but taking intentional steps to increasing economic trade and increasing various other opportunities, we also want to see that on the African continent. And that actually very much excites me, because I do think that there is a lot that can be done and that should be done when Africans recognize the value that they have, and they engage in partnership with a country like Israel that has shown its friendship over the years, and to see how the economic opportunities that relationship will manifest will then be able to help address many of the issues that are taking place on the African continent. So kudos to them. And to any Black person that is under the sound of our voice, please don't let the other side, based on their lies and their promises of fame and their promises of support and blah, 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 move you away from the truth.
Yep.
if anything, if you're not sure, pause and be like, you know what, let me figure this out for myself. You're welcome to contact the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel with your questions. We can provide you and will provide you with resources that will help you make an informed decision. Like Joshua very well expressed, they have been using us. They have been using our voice. They have been using our credibility. They've been using the moral authority that we bring on a lot of issues because of our past experience. Don't let them take you for a ride. Don't let them use you, because they will use you and spit you out once they are done.
Absolutely. I was thinking about now, I think it was my first article when I first came on with IPSI officially. It was before we had Substack, before you and I met, before all of that, I think. Well, I think we were friends. That's what it was. And it was in Times of Israel. And I think it was called Israel, Africa, and Black America. I think that's what it's called, like this forum. And the article itself is about what Olga's talking about. No, we were together because it was right after Black Panther came out. Now I'm thinking, because I wrote the article right after Black Panther, the movie, came out, the first one. And the whole idea was this Africa-Israel alliance isn't just going to be good for the continent and for Israel, but for Black Americans, because right now there are places like Nigeria where many parts of Nigeria that are completely have been taken over by Boko Haram, taken over by the Fulani herdsmen. Children are being kidnapped. People are enslaved. It's one of the places where jihad, terror, and slavery runs rampant. And, as Black Americans, many of us, we know, or we at least have an idea of the fact that we came from mainly Western Africa, right? Our ancestors came here. Not all of us, but a lot of us, our ancestors came here as slaves from West Africa, right? And so this was at the time when people were really excited about Wakanda, or excited about Black Panther, and there were artists, there were rappers. I know this Nigerian American rapper named Jadena, or he's Nigerian. He's an Igbo. He's Igbo, and he was talking about having an equivalent of a birthright, but for Black Americans. We can go back to our roots, and it's something that will be paid for. And he was talking about for a while, and he actually launched it a couple of years ago, which was cool to see. But this whole thing of bringing Black Americans back to Africa, particularly Western Africa, to actually see where it is that they came from, and actually to learn and to really not just, go to a couple of parties and kiss the ground, but to actually learn about the culture and the history and the gap, right? The gap between what happened and where we were brought and what happened to us when we came here. And the article is basically saying that this could be way more possible and more enriching with Israel's help, because Israel's helping, especially counterterrorism, can actually help free Nigeria from all the jihad stuff. That would actually open up the entire country to Black Americans coming and visiting, right? It wouldn't just be parts here and there, and like much of North Africa right now is taken over by radical Islam over the past few centuries. No, these partnerships can actually help the Africans take back what is rightfully theirs, which then in turn would help us. So I still stand by that. I think we're realizing that. I think that's what's happening now. And what was really great about the conference was having someone like Olga speak, Simon Dang, who's a former slave from South Sudan, a political activist, who could actually speak to these Black American pastors, and for some of them to actually start to make that connection of like, okay, no, this isn't just what's happening over here on this continent, but these are still my people in a way. And how can I be more of assistance as a member of like one of the most prosperous member of the diaspora, and I know we like to complain about America here and there, but out of all the diaspora, we went through slavery, Jim Crow. I'm not saying it was all roses for us. What I'm saying is, in this time now, we are faring the best. we're doing much better than our brothers and sisters in Nigeria and Libya. We're doing much better than them in Sudan right now. No, we are doing very well for ourselves here. And so we need to use our voice now and our privilege and our place of power to speak to now our brothers and sisters who are going through what our ancestors went through. It's important, and that all those things play into each other, and we're honored and we feel privileged to be able to be a part of it even in this small way, with these conferences, speaking to these pastors and planning these events for next year, meeting with pastors all across the country to talk about this very thing. We think it's very important. So yeah, sorry, that was a long tangent, but I just wanted to say what you said is very resonant, and I think it's gonna move in a good direction. Yeah. Speaking of the forum, so again, our CEO just put out a new article, just letting you guys know about what happened at the DC forum in bigger detail. So if you're not subscribed, go to our Substack and check it out. Subscribe to Africa Israel Weekly. Go to ibsi.substack.com, and you can check out this latest article. It's called IPSI, the Washington DC Forum, and you can see how great it was. A few of our ambassadors were there, our IPSI ambassadors, which was amazing. We had Rabbi Yaakov Hadani was there. We had our ambassador Jasmine, and then Tim as well, who actually got to share with the pastors. They got to hear from, shout out to the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, IFCJ. Pastor Roger Cheeks was there, and he spoke beautifully on the biblical foundations. Our CEO and founder spoke on what was going on politically and what's going on now currently in Israel and how that affects the Black community. Olga spoke on the Africa-Israel relationship. Simon Dang spoke on slavery on the African continent and how Israel's enemies are Africa's enemies. All four of those things are vastly important, and we'll be taking that show on the road. I mean, it's going to go all over the country. So if you want us to come to your city, your area, speak to your pastor and his network of pastors, his or her network of pastors, we're there. Let us know. Reach out to us, and we're very much looking forward to it as we're planning 2025.
And if you don't know any pastors, you're not part of a congregation, or you're not aware of any persons in your community, but you would still like to play an important role in ensuring that this truth is shared across and that there is education, once again, consider becoming a legacy builder. In fact, I'm not even going to say consider, I'm going to say become a legacy builder. Also, if you just want to make a one-time donation, that is also very much welcomed towards ensuring that we have the means to be able to respond to the call to not only visit these churches, have these sessions, but also to put out the material that people are reading, whether it's, for example, the Africa Weekly articles that are put out on the regular, or actually some of the articles that all of us write that are featured in other news platforms, because there is a message, it's an important message that the Institute for Black Solidarity is putting out there. And so if you want to play your role in that, do give a contribution, become a financial partner to us.
Please do. You all, thank you so much for tuning in every week. And we will, like I said, there are a couple other announcements that we're so excited to be able to tell you, but we can't tell you just yet. But join our mailing list. Go on our website, join our mailing list, and you'll be the first to know. Maybe by next week we'll be able to tell you some stuff, but it's gonna be awesome. Scan that QR code, join our mailing list, and again, thank you for being here with us. The last thing, sorry, there is one more announcement. I forgot all about this. We have in South Carolina what is called the Turning the Tide of Trade Conference. Okay, and that is hosted by Professor Ansel Brown, by Pastor Olusegun, and
the Pearsons. They're just co-hosts also that are on the ground.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And then also, you can tell more about it. We're excited to be a part of it as well.
Yeah. One of the reasons why this is an important event, particularly for African Americans, is that it goes towards strengthening the African American as well as African relationship, but more specifically from a trade perspective. And the organizations that are putting this conference together are organizations that are involved in the Israel advocacy space. They are organizations that we have worked with very closely. One of them is the Abrahamic Foundation. And so once again, here is an example of how the strengthening of this relationship with Israel and the Jewish people, and also Africans as well as African Americans. One day, Joshua, maybe we should talk about how, because it's actually a question that came up at the forum about the differences, even though we're kinfolk, right? We're similar, but there's a lot of differences between the Africans and the African Americans. And we laugh about it, and we've grown about it even in our marriage. So it just goes to showcase that the work of strengthening this relationship also has great benefit to all parties involved. And so this is a conference showcasing the benefit from a business perspective. So if you're a business person or just interested in what a good relationship between African Americans and Africans will look like, please do join us in Charleston in October. Yeah,
we would love to see you guys there. Great. Well, you guys, thank you. That's it. We hope you all have enjoyed this forum. And again, we'll be back next week, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Let your friends know. And again, thank you for supporting us at IPSI. We will see you next week. Bye, guys.
Have a good evening. Bye-bye.